Hi guys, I want to get into some Blood Meridian talk. Cormac McCarthy. I did a video about No Country for Old Men. This is his probably crowning achievement book, and if you haven't read it, it's been around for about 30-something years, and it is fantastically written. Singular, wonderful, lyrical, horrifying, scary, violent, gruesome, gory, cruel, gutting, all the things. So there's this quote that gets passed around in culture, and it was in like JFK, and it's been in a couple other books, that the basic organizing principle of society is war. And I think it rings true, considering that nothing is quite that simple, but Anyway, war. War is the biggest thing we do as humans, in the sense that it has the most lasting and serious existential implications. This goes without saying, and yet it's sometimes strangely easy to forget. War is life and death, after all. And it's simple to say, war sucks, man, and act better than somebody else, and be all enlightened, and stick your nose up, and pretend like you're way better and cooler. I do it all the time, so I totally understand. But that really doesn't get you anywhere. And if there was an actual anti-war political crowd, I might join them, but probably not. I'm not much of a joiner, and I'm not sure it exists. Maybe I would, but I think it's like 4 people, and 2 of them are in Seattle, and we might not get along. Not getting along would collapse our entire belief system, so I really don't want to take the chance. It's cool to have friends, though. Dang it. I can feel the conflict already. So, wow, it's a complicated subject. There's a spectrum. And like I said, I shade towards war sucks, but I also recognize that conflict is inevitable and bred into humanity's nature. I know this because I've lived longer than 3 seconds. I also recognize that conflict has an affinity to it. People are drawn to conflict perhaps more than anything else besides eating and drinking and being merry. I say this because I write stories, and the number one thing you can't take out of a story is conflict. It's in the rules. I don't even like rules, but some stuff's a priori and self-evident. Can't fight City Hall on this one. It's always fighting. There's so much fighting and conflict. So would the perfect world be one without war and conflict? I don't know. There's something to be said for that line that if there's nothing worth fighting for, there's nothing worth living for. I don't really know. That has a certain logic to it, but let's get even deeper into this sucker. I'm still working it out, and probably will be until I draw my last breath. Let's check in on what the judge has to say about it in Blood Meridian. He's an authority on the matter, I'll say, considering that up until this point in the book, he and his homies have engaged in every sort of violence and conflict one could imagine. For real, this dude and the Glanton gang are hellhounds. It's freaking terrifying. So we'll pick it up where the band of warriors / scalpers / mercenaries, rogues, are debating the very nature of war. Quote, "It makes no difference what men think of war," said the judge. "War endures. As well ask men what they think of stone. War was always here. Before man was, war waited for him. The ultimate trade awaiting its ultimate practitioner. This is the way it was and will be. That way and not some other way." Alright, so he's saying that like stone war was already here. It precedes us. It's a giant immovable monolith, and it's also a Platonic idea, so it's perfectly and horribly inescapable by this definition. It's physically here, it's existentially here, and it's in the realm of ideals, like Plato's cave type stuff. So we're screwed. Is the judge right? I don't think so. I mean, he's a freaking psychopath after all, but he's not wrong when he says that war endures. That point, at least, I'll have to concede. What else does he have? Quote, "Men are born for games, nothing else. Every child knows that play is nobler than work. He knows, too, that the worth or merit of a game is not inherent in the game itself, but rather in the value of that which is put at hazard. Games of chance require a wager to have meaning at all," end quote. There's a bit of Pascalian philosophy here. I tend to agree with this part of what he's saying, but just because you agree with the part doesn't mean you agree with the whole. Games, you need something riding on them. I've played cards with no money on the line and found the experience empty. It can't hold my attention. If I'm playing soccer or ping pong and not keeping score, I'd rather just sit in a chair and drink. Might as well. Stakes are everything in a game, he's saying, and he's about to posit that all games are simply meager replicas of the ultimate game, war. Quote, "This enhancement of the game to its ultimate state admits no argument concerning the notion of fate. The selection of one man over another is a preference absolute and irrevocable, and it is a dull man indeed who could reckon so profound a decision without agency or significance either one. In such games as have for their stake the annihilation of the defeated, the decisions are quite clear." Ooh, no, that's pretty hefty language. Just, and not the word choices, but the way he kind of the word placing is so unique and Cormac McCarthy-ish that it takes a little getting used to. So go back over that a couple of times if you want to get the gist of what the judge is laying down. What do I get out of it? Well, let's go down that hole for a second. There's a kind of a will to power post-Darwinian might makes right Nietzschean vibe thing. I'd argue with the judge, of course, because when one confronts an eloquent lunatic, one has to say something. I'd say, Judge, come on, man. Games must have stakes to be meaningful, but they can still be fun. We can shoot hoops and one of us can lose, but we can still go home alive, and after a few cuss words and kicking the chain link fence, we can go have beers and move on to the next thing. I think this is the evolution of conflict, whereas he argues that putting your entire life on the line is the highest form of the, quote, game. There's a certain logic to that, but it's rather petty to keep existence all for yourself and take existence from another to achieve the highest level. Maybe you need a hobby. For instance, I like to jog once a week for 10 to 12 minutes. It helps rid me of that creepy 19th century Prussian German philosopher bloodlust. It's funny, you know. A few different people lately have been asking me about The Wire to see if it's worth watching. Of course it is. It's the best thing ever. Anyway, they're always saying the game is the game in that show, referring to drug dealing, murder, and corruption on both sides of the law as the game. I love The Wire for its depiction of said game, but hate the violence and human suffering that inspired it. Does that make me a hypocrite? I'm thinking yes. Most emphatically, yes, it does. So there's a lot for me to ponder, and it's not all fun. I'd rather be playing games, but the non-violent kind. Or the violent kind that doesn't result in actual violence in the real world. Now that I think about it, if they had PS4 back in the day, I don't think the judge would even exist. He'd just be a guy playing Red Dead Redemption 2, eating potato chips and making YouTube videos about things. Wait a minute. And thus ends my analysis of a passage from one of the greatest books ever. Tyler has words. Like and subscribe, please. See you after. Peace, y'all.